Hi everyone, I am Didinje, the author of Gmail.com, and now I will show you the Ionic 4 tutorial on how to create mobile apps quickly. In this Ionic 4 tutorial, we will show you how to create mobile apps quickly using Ionic 4, Angular 8, and Cordova. In other words, this tutorial is the starting point to learn Ionic Framework, Angular, and Cordova. What you will get this is not just create and writing Ionic-Angular apps, but a little bit meaningful by displaying data in Ionic list or grid, details, using Ionic card and Google Maps. Also, you will learn the basic routing for Ionic Tabs that included the parameters. For more details about accessing data from REST API, Firebase, or Google Maps related, we have written the tutorial for you on our site. This tutorial will be done in 6 steps plus 1 step to run and test in Android and iOS devices. Step number 1. Preparation. Step number 2. Create an Ionic 4 app with the type of Angular. Step number 3. Modify Angular X routes. Step number 4. Display data to the Ionic list or grid. Step number 5. Display data to the Ionic card. Step number 6. Display Google Maps. Step number 7, or the last step, run and test the Ionic 4 Angular X apps on devices. The following tools, frameworks, and modules are required for this tutorial. Node.js. Here they are. Ionic frameworks you can find on this address. Cordova, terminal or command line. We are using terminal on MacBook, IDE or text editor. Actually, we are using Visual Studio Code. Let's get started to the main steps. Step number 1, preparation. The first step of this tutorial prepares the environment to create the Ionic 4 apps. We will use the Mac OS or the Windows environment, choose one of them, and download the Node.js. Just use the recommended version. Install the downloaded Node.js to your Mac or Windows machine, then check the version of Node.js by typing this command in the terminal or command line. We assume that you have already installed Node.js to your machine. Type node v, and here we are using the version 10 of Node.js, and type npm -v, and we are using npm version 6.11.3. Next, we will install the Ionic CLI, which now is version 5, and Cordova. Type this command in the terminal or command line to install it. Sudo npm -i sudo npm i -g Ionic Cordova. Remember it, the sudo is optional. You can directly type npm i.g Ionic Cordova in Windows machine. Wait few minutes, it's depending on the speed of your internet connection. As you see, at the end of the Ionic and Cordova installation, We have Ionic CLI 5 and Cordova 9. Now we have ready to use Ionic frameworks and Cordova environment in our machine. Step number 2. Create an Ionic 4 app with the type of Angular. We will create an Ionic 4 apps with the type of Angular and default templates using tabs. To do that, type this command in the terminal or commands line. Ionic start Ionic tutorial tabs -- type Angular. The Ionic tutorial is the name for this new Ionic application. Just wait for a few minutes. It will take a long time or short depending on your internet connection. We will add Cordova later before we test the Ionic Angular apps to the Android or iOS devices. Okay, it's done. Next, go to the newly created Ionic-Angular application, then run the Ionic-Angular apps for the first time. After you go to the Ionic tutorial folder, just run Ionic serve-l. If there's any question to install the Ionic lab, just type Y. It will automatically installing Ionic Lab modules. Here we go. Ionic Angular apps will open the default browser automatically, and here the apps looks like in the lab mode. Step number 3. Modify Angular egg rows. We need to pass ID parameters to tab 2 and tab 3. But first, open the Ionic project using your favorite IDE or text editor. We will be using Visual Studio Code, which is the open source IDE that supported multiple programming language, frameworks, and tools. Type this command from the terminal or command line to open the current project. Code dot. Now the Visual Studio Code will open it and show the welcome starting page. So we will modify the default generated SLC app tabs and tabs routing modules.js. This is a TypeScript file. We just add the Angular routes with additional parameters. Copy and paste from the GitHub to make this tutorial faster. Next, we will go to the next steps. Number 4. Display data in the Ionic list or grid. To display data as Ionic list or grid, first we have to create an array of objects. We will put this array of objects in separate file. For that, create a new TypeScript file in src app folder. We are using player.ts. It will automatically open from the Visual Studio Code. And fill this file with an array of football players. Save this file. Next, open and edit src app tab 1 page ts. Then add these imports of player array that previously created an Angular route. Next, inject the Angular router to the constructor using public identifier. Add the variable before the constructor to handle or hold an array of objects and a few types, list or grid. Don't forget to save the warping. Next, add these functions after the constructor to switch the view of the grid or list. Next, open and edit src app tab 1 page HTML. Then add or replace this line of HTML tags that display the list or grid from the array of objects. As you can see, there are the buttons in the toolbar that show and hide based on the list or grid types. Then click action will trigger the change of list or grid, view types, that previously created in the TypeScript file. Okay, go to the next steps. Step number 5. Display data to the Ionic card. We make the option to display details in Ionic card in tab 2. First, we will display the default static Ionic card content if there no data comes from other tabs. Second, we will display the Ionic card of details that come from the other tabs. To do that, open and edit HRC app tab 2 page TS. Then add or modify these imports of Angular on init, activate router and player array. Add implementation of Angular on init to the class name. Inject the Angular activate route and router to the constructor. Add the variables before the constructor that hold details object and player array. Next, add an Angular ng on init functions that find object from the player array. We use ng on init because we want to load the details from the array every tab to show up. Next, add a function to navigate to the tab 3 or show the Google Maps. This function is using router navigate. It just add a path to the tab 3 and the parameters which is using ID. Next, we have to implementing the view for this controller. Open and edit HRC app tab 2.page.html. Then replace all HTML tags with this. As you see, there are two Ion cards that display static details and details from objects based on details objects existence. The first card, if there's no details object, and the second card, if there is a details exists. Save this file. And step number 6, display Google Maps. In this step, we will show the Google Maps that come from the static latitude or longitude or dynamic latitude or longitude from the object. For that, open and edit HRC app tab 3 and tab 3 page TS. Then add or modify these imports. Declare the Google Maps and map variable before the component. Add the implementation of Angular on init in the class name line. Inject the activated route and platform to the constructor. Add the variables of viewChild, details objects, and playArray before the constructor. Add the Angular ng-on-init function that loads the Google Maps inside the platform-ready method. This function is under constructor. The Google Maps coordinate based on data they count from the previous tab. If the data is null, then we put the static coordinates. Next, open and edit the tab HTML file. Then replace all HTML tags with just this. As you see, there's just a div that holds the Google Maps. To make this Google Maps working, we need to import or load the Google Maps JavaScript API library to the src index.html before the end of the body tag. The Google Maps only working if the div have a hake. So add this CSS code to the tab 3 page SCSS. Okay, that is the whole steps. And finally, to the last steps. Step number 7. Run and test the Ionic 4 or Angular apps. In these steps, we will be working with the Cordova before run and test the Ionic 4 or Angular apps to the Androids or iOS devices. Back to the terminal. First, remove and add all platforms from these Ionic app projects by typing these commands. Ionic, Cordova, platform, RM, Android. This command is for removing an existing Android platform. If there is no Cordova installed, it will automatically install in the Cordova. Then add again the Android platform. Okay. To remove iOS platform, type this command. Ionic Cordova platform RM iOS. To edit again, just change the RM to add. Now you can run the Ionic 4 or Angular 8 apps to the Androids and iOS devices. Type this command to run directly to the Android device and make sure the Android device connected to your computer. Otherwise, it will running to your default Android Studio virtual devices. For iOS, we need to build this app first. Using this command, Ionic Cordova build iOS. Okay, open the Xcode, then open Files, find the platforms, iOS, My App, XU Workspace. Now you can just build and run count scheme. Just click this play button. Simulator will open it automatically, and this way the simulator open it in few minutes. If you plan to run on devices, make sure you have a signing provisioning profile. And here it is, the full working iOS application using Ionic and Angular 8. We have the list of players, then the grid, the details, and the Google Maps. That's it. If you think this screencast tutorial useful, you can click like, give the comments or suggestions, and subscribe to my channel. You can see the text version of this tutorial and the source codes in the descriptions below. Thank you and see you in the next tutorial.